First, I'm not trying to explain that what Jephthah did was moral. I think there are two possibilities for what happened, and I don't think there's an excuse for him. Errors in the Bible, or more specifically, Bible contradictions. Type that in Google, and the first site you'll come across to is from American Atheists. On their site, they state, if written by a perfect being, then it must not contradict itself, as a collection of books written by different men at different times over many centuries will be expected to contradict each other. They list their contradictions to be the Sabbath day, the permanence of earth, seeing God, human sacrifice, the power of God, personal injury, circumcision, incest, trusting God, the holy lifestyle, punishing crime, temptation, family relationship, the resurrection of the dead, and the end of the world. If you've been counting, that's 15 contradictions listed. I'm not here trying to say that the Bible is perfect. I want to know if these supposed mistakes really show that the Bible is wrong. I looked into this a lot. This is like my third time going over this, but I really want to hear from you. Please share your ideas and arguments in the comment section. Let's talk about it. That's all I got for an opening. You shall not give any of your children to offer them to Molech, nor shall you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Leviticus chapter 18, verse 21. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord, and said, if you will indeed hand over to me the sons of Ammon, then whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return safely from the sons of Ammon, it shall be the Lord's, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering. Judges chapter 11, from verse 30 to 31. While there isn't a direct command on human sacrifices in the Bible, you can infer in verses like Leviticus chapter 18, verse 21, and Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 31, that the Lord is against it. So why does it seem like in the story of Jephthah, from Judges chapter 11, from verses 29 to 40, that the Lord would give victory to Israel based on Jephthah sacrificing his daughter? First, there seems to be a huge misunderstanding. Just because you pray to God for something to happen, and that something does happen, doesn't mean that God caused some divine intervention to cause that thing to happen. For example, if I pray to God for rain tomorrow, and it rains tomorrow, doesn't mean God provided some divine intervention for that. Could be possible. Or how about a hypothetical game between an NFL team and a college team? If an NFL quarterback prays for victory over the team, and that he'll cut off his arm for victory, and they win, I wouldn't say that God provided some divine intervention for victory. Even though it's possible, I would say that it was just a natural occurrence or a predicted outcome. The worst NFL team should beat the best college football team. Just because Jephthah prayed to God for victory this time, and as a stipulation, doesn't mean that Jephthah and Israel won because God wanted his offering. First, I'm not trying to explain that what Jephthah did was moral. I think there are two possibilities for what happened, and I don't think there's an excuse for him. Just because the Bible details an event doesn't mean it's prescribed to people to follow. It's just recorded in a historical event. The first possibility is that he offered his daughter as a burnt offering. Verse 31 says, wherever comes out of the door, I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering, if they beat the Amorites. When they won, Jephthah returned home, and his daughter was the first one out the door. His crying can be perceived as if he's believing that he has to sacrifice his daughter, and verse 39 states that he did to her as her father vowed. This could infer that the Israelites were so corrupted and were already on the path to corruption that Jephthah believed he must sacrifice his daughter. Again, there is no indication that Jephthah and Israel would have lost that battle if he never made that vow. Deuteronomy chapter 23 from verses 21 to 23 shows the dangers of breaking a vow with the Lord. Then again, the vow should not go against his laws. Jephthah probably believed that he had to observe a certain law a certain way that wasn't intended to compensate for him breaking the other law. I think this is a less likely approach because you have to believe the Levites who performed the burnt offerings were okay with having his daughter as a burnt offering. The second possibility is that Jephthah did offer his daughter but as a vow of sacrifice. Leviticus chapter 7 and verse 16, chapter 22 verse 18, and verse 21 are the starting points for knowing what a vow offering is. Each vow offering performed must be presented with a burnt offering. Leviticus chapter 27 and Numbers chapter 6 describes the process if someone makes a certain vow to the Lord, and the process that is supposed to happen. Numbers chapter 15 verse 8 and chapter 29 verse 39 further echo the process of offering and burnt offerings along with a vow. You could even look at the example of 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 11, where Hannah vowed that if the Lord granted her a son, she would dedicate him to God's service. The son, Samuel, grew up to be a renowned prophet serving the Lord. Notably, when Hannah fulfilled her vow, she also presented a burnt offering at Shiloh. Since his daughter left the door first, he had to offer his daughter to the Lord, not as a human sacrifice to a vengeful God, but as someone in service to God's temple, which is how vow offerings are supposed to be performed. When looking later in the chapter, there seems to be an echo point on his daughter's virginity, which if she was offered as a vow offering would have to remain a virgin. Jephthah, his daughter, and others will be crying because she will remain the rest of her life as a virgin, as this was his only child. This was the end to Jephthah's lineage. Now, human sacrifice. We explore two main possibilities regarding the narrative of Jephthah and his daughter. First, the possibility that Jephthah indeed offered his daughter as a human sacrifice, reflecting the time of moral confusion and desperation among Israel. And second, the alternative interpretation where his daughter was offered as a vow offering, dedicated to a life of service and not death. Honestly, whichever possibilities you prefer, it doesn't really matter. While Leviticus seems to go against human sacrifices, the narrative in Judges 11 doesn't depict God providing some divine intervention for Israel since Jephthah made some vow. Rather, it depicts human error and impulsiveness that leads to Jephthah to his predicament.